Further ado, I'd like to introduce our next speaker, which is Karolina Majewska Güde, who's a PhD researcher, art historian, and curator. Her research focuses on the East Central European new avant-gardes, feminist epistemologies, performance art, contemporary issues of circulation, translation, and knowledge production through art-based research. She works closely with feminist artists of different generations, which is linked to her work on rethinking an artistic archive as a place of collaboration and maintainment, where reproductive and creative work are intertwined. Majewska Güde is a founding member of the research collective Pisze Mówi Robi, did I say it? Which combines performative and interpretative research and is dedicated to curating exhibitions and workshops focused on artistic research practices and artistic archives. She has co-curated several exhibitions, contributed to publications focused on art from post-socialist Europe, and among her more recent publications, I would also like to mention a book on Eva Partum's artistic practice and atlas of continuity in different locations that has just recently been published by Transgenerational. Thank you for being with us. We're looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you very much. As you could have seen just a second ago, I'm also adventurous art historian, and I'm going to continue with this. I'm short-sighted. Cannot find my presentation. Oh yes, yes. And what should I press? Control L?
No, first close.
That's not the
First close. And then it's
Control L.
easy. I don't know. I'm just putting it.
It's really crazy with this. So, I'm happy that I know that we are all very tired, and I don't know if I talk too long, just wait, and we can continue in a less official way. But I'm happy that I talk almost at the very end, because I could just kind of maybe not really dialogue with, but relate my presentation to everything that was said. And I see very strong lead that my own things. This is great, like, perfect. That it's very much the attempt to somehow also problematize the potentiality that Tomek in his opening remarks spoken about, but the potentiality that would rather refer to something that Daniel called undigested histories. And generally, the stake of my new research that I'm going to introduce to you is precisely to generate agendas out of experience, throwing the responsibility towards artists, basically. So we also see, obviously, a lot of other connections, but I would say this is the genre. And so in the first part of the presentation, I will tell you a little about the reasons that I think for integrating artistic research practices to generally historiography of East Central Europe done from feminist perspective. And in the second part, I will talk a little bit about the theoretical assumptions of my new research. So the kind of potentiality is double, because I didn't even start yet. It's just a kind of framework for theoretical framework on my new research on ceramic painters from a faience, so porcelain factory in a small provincial town in Poland. The project that I will discuss combine really several interrelated research goals, but here I will focus on this methodological because I wanted to adjust my talk to the what to be done conference and just ask you, what do you think? What I'm going to do? What are your kind of comments, and am I already doing too crazy things, or it's still possible to continue this path? And I hope that during this talk it will become clear why I believe that examining the history of the producers of hand-painted ceramic can enrich our understanding of the socialist art institution, and what does it integrating artistic research has to do with it. So a little bit about artistic research and feminist art history, very general intro. Feminist critique of science and new materialist feminist epistemologies redefine the relationship between so-called natural sciences and humanities, and not only in terms of expanding their methodologies or their agendas, but this discourses participated in the transformation of the very concept of science, working against disciplinary boundaries and towards continuities. Most successful concepts that we will all come across, such as, for instance, Karen Barat, agental realism, the notion of interaction, or Donna Haraway's speculative fabulation, promise an opening towards different knowledges in which the relationship between object and subject of knowledge is rewritten in the direction of permanent interdependency and co-constitution. So this epistemic concept and practices influence strongly contemporary artistic practices, and to a certain extent also historiography. I also understand art historical research as historiography, as the attempt to reconstruct the historical alterity of art object, processes, institutions, meaning, and the concept of art, which is also historical, obviously. But reconstructing this while maintaining our awareness of the researchers' own motivations. This new materialist feminist approaches promote a certain ethic, precisely ethic of care, but it's based on the awareness of interdependence, relatedness, and the sensitivity towards non-discursive form of knowledge or knowledges. It is about acting with this awareness of one's own situatedness as a researcher in political, socioeconomic, institutional, gender, and embodied contexts, also understood historically, as historically produced. This awareness relates to asking questions about the possible pasts and possible subject of history, pays attention to precisely to sciences, object and subject traditionally considered as inferior. And this alertness forces us to look beyond the hegemonic understanding of archives and historical records, and this is where this is the exciting part for researching, I think. And it moves us also towards developing alternative narrative strategies. And I wanted to share with you two contrasting examples of social history writing on marginalized gendered subjects. First one is the book by Saidiya Hartman, Wayward Lives, which is focused on a first post-slavery female generation. And another one is Joanna Kuciel-Friedrichak's book on female peasants, a history about our grandmothers. And in the first book, the author recreates the past world using literary fiction and poetry, and she based this narrative on archival materials, which are obviously very erratic. In the second case, the author respects the convention of art historiography. In both cases, the focus is on marginalized groups with almost non-existent archives. And the strategy of fabulation, defined by Haraway as a mode of the practice of worlding or imagining alternative worlds or a mode of attention. So in this practice, with this mode of attention, it seems that it's possible to reconstruct not only the past, but precisely the possible past, but also ongoing legacies of marginalized subjects who are portrayed not only as the victims of certain historical processes, but as history makers. And I juxtapose these two books just to mention this idea that speculative fabulation can be a means of transformative historiography. And this is what I'm interested in. And I have a hypothesis that maybe when examining marginalized artistic or cultural practices, artistic research could also provide means that move us beyond retroactive art history, so art history that recuperates formerly marginalized subject narratives and so on, but move us towards precisely the transformative art history. By transformative art history, I understand art historical investigation concerned not just with representing the unrepresented or suppressed or repressed, but concerned with different ways of producing knowledge about the past. I don't know if it's totally utopian, but I have 3 years to check that. So why I think why artistic research can help us with that. Now I would like to just mention the kind of outside of this idea, and then I will go into details a little bit later. So artistic research is currently the dominant paradigm of current artistic production, and it can be understood as a heterogeneous element of post-conceptual artistic curatorial and educational practices, or generally practices in the field of art, which is now currently undergoing very intensive institutionalization, academization, regulation. And it has certain genealogies which we can point to also in terms of regional art history, local art histories, and broadly speaking, Western art history too. But what is the difference between kind of knowledge production about art from this perspective of artistic research? So to just point the finger on this potentiality, one can say that if art in our discipline it's considered as an object of knowledge, in artistic research there is this idea of art as a subject of knowledge. And this is the link to this epistemic turn in contemporary artistic production. And on the one hand, it is self-directed knowledge, so knowledge about art, but there is this also idea about outward-directed knowledge, so knowledge through art, some kind of different form of knowledge beyond the discursive or academic or logocentric forms of knowledge. And this kind of ability of art to produce knowledge, Tom Hollet in his book Knowledge Besides Itself calls active epistemic functioning of art. So this is what I will be researching in the case of my project of using. And as I said, it's only a part of the project, but I think this is what interests me. Obviously, we cannot just say that we are there because this idea of active epistemic functioning of art is only one part of artistic research practice. There is also another issues related to this format of artistic production. And I just wanted to mention this to make you aware that I'm aware of the criticisms. I'm not trying to idealize these forms. I'm just trying to create an experimental situation in which I can probe this and check if actually it is going to help us to understand pasts or create the past worlds or not. And so now I would like to tell you a little bit about my project. The project, as I said, which is focusing on the producers of the hand-painted ceramic in Włocławek factory. And this project combines precisely these two types of knowledge in dialogue, or two types of research: art historical research, so archival research, primary and secondary sources, qualitative research, and artistic research, understood by me as a performative research. And the project is related at the intersection of feminist art history and social and cultural history of People's Republic of Poland. And as I mentioned, has a number of interrelated goals. As you can see on the slide, in recent years, Polish historians of the socialist period have paid much attention to the history from below, with the women's history occupying a special place in that concept. Some popular science books, in addition to presenting some synthesis, have depicted the histories of different groups of female workers. However, research on women's art in Polish People's Republic has, thus far, predominantly focused on the individual practices of professional artist women active in the field of art or on its margins. Yet, the socialist understanding of art also encompassed collective identities and hybrid infrastructures within which arts and artistic crafts both functions as part of artistic industry. And I think that this little factory in Wrocław, where I'm from, can be an example of such an institution. The ceramic factories in Wrocław were founded in the late 19th century in the then multinational provincial town. They were founded by Jewish traders who imported their materials and clay from Saxony and manufactured consumer goods for markets in the Russian Empire. The factories were nationalized and gradually transformed after 1945 into a factory of Polish tradition, producing utilitarian and decorative hand-painted ceramics inspired by vernacular local visual culture, and for a short period of time in the 60s, also by modern art. The factory mainly employed female workers, painters who were trained by professional artists in the 1950s in the productivist workshops, and they learned the craft from older colleagues in the 60s, and in the 70s they studied ceramic painting in a 2-year factory school. The painters work collectively and individually in different, or in the two modes of production: mass production on the one hand for the local and international markets, and individual artists for the state-initiated competitions that were intended to monitor and direct the development of people's art through two expert discourses, artistic and ethnographic. So my research project, or our research project, focuses on reassembling the practices, voices, cross-generational collaboration and solidarities of these painters, and simultaneously it's concerned with the historicization and interpretation of the socialist art institution and its transformations in the socialist area, with particular emphasis on the concepts such as artistic work, artistic knowledge, and collective authorship. So here, this is the moment when I can relate my talk to what Christian said about necessity of rethinking art as work. So this is like an important part of this project. The work of painters in the science factory is understood as a specific form of labor that, I quote, challenges the historical disavowal of art as labor. This was Katia Prasnik. And I follow Katia Prasnik's argument about the mystification of artistic labor as non-work within Western art institutions from the late 18th century onwards, which have expressed, and I quote again, historical attachment to the idea that artistic practice is not work but creativity emanating from artistic genius. The project aims at understanding precisely the ceramic painters as art workers by reconstructing these working identities, strategies, methods, and knowledges. Prasnik claims that the ambiguous understanding of art as non-work reinforces an amnesia about times and places where art was seen as work in the best sense of the word. So the research therefore focuses on the socialist art institution with this kind of entangled aesthetic and political mechanisms that resulted in the concept of, in the practice rather than the concept of art as work. So the focus is on the socialist experiment, as you can see, of merging forms of artistic knowledge, professional and amateur, into collective practice at the science factory. It critically explores this fragment of the legacy of socialist culture with the aim of rethinking also contemporary concept of artistic knowledge and the related hierarchies. The production policy at the Science Factory rely upon the implementation of ideas of national culture with its conceptual roots in historical avant-garde concept of productivism, utopian ideas of art created in factories, and pre-war conceptualization of national culture and preservation of so-called folk culture, further developed in post-war socialism. So it's like a layer of different practices and traditions and discourses that were kind of materialized there. This situates science in a broader context of socialist Europe, where, I quote, socialist culture policies supported culture production not only by professional artists, but also by people in general. The project reconsiders gendered aspect of this regional version of the mystification of art, a practice that matches an ethos, as I said, of avant-garde and state-planned economy, an idea of artistic labor as not separate from everyday life. The official cultural ideology of the Polish state changed several times over the course of socialism following global political and socio-economic processes. The changes in the cultural policy of the Polish state were reflected also in the form of work organization at the factory. The subsequent phases of the reorganization of work were shaped by the historical framework of Stalinism and its cultural policy, then I don't know how to pronounce it, post-socialist, and finally, by increasing neoliberal socio-economic and political processes that have taken place worldwide since late 70s. The aim of the research is to locate the science hair stories within these global processes as situated answer to the given geopolitical and economic conditions. So, methodology. So, as I said, the primary goal is to historicize this work, but this methodological reflection is also critical in this case, and it realizes by integrating artistic research activities into the project, not as a form of disseminating the artistic results, but as complementary research method. Artistic research is here understood as a practice that combines artistic practice with theoretical inquiry, which I quote, expands existing epistemological horizons as outlined by academic conventions. So, I don't know how, I still have 2 pages. Should I go on? Or somebody monitors time?
Yeah.
I can go on. Dobra. So, in this case, this active epistemic role of art will be used to explore historically evolving concept of artistic work and artistic knowledge. The knowledge which has been defined today by contemporary theories as not knowledge, not yet knowledge, sensual knowledge, individual knowledge, or tacit knowledge. So this is all the kind of theoretical frameworks that try to theorize artistic research outcomes or potential outcomes and forms of knowing that artists can through their practices develop. The work of painters in the Science Factory also required certain type of non-discursive and embodied knowledges, and that's why I think the artistic research could help us to research this part of making and doing art in the factory. So, on the one hand, artistic research connects us with the question of regulation, control procedures, measurable results, usability, and research ethics. But on the other hand, this artistic opens up the possibility of certain freedoms from regulatory discourses. Nevertheless, I think it is crucial to at least try to sketch some guiding questions that could help us to assess the artistic research procedures. And this I borrowed from theoretical kind of writings of Barbara Bolt, who is an Australian theoretician, and she put forward some kind of control questionnaire that I will think I'm going to start with. So the question that I will be posed are what methodological changes have occurred during the process of artistic research, what has been re-evaluated through the work realized during the research, which new concepts have emerged as a result of research, and do these concepts change understanding and the practice in the field. Polymethodological, multi-phase, and multi-author oriented approach has been used by researchers who are and researchers that have different competences in the field of cultural history from the gender perspective. But in this case, this methodological focus of the project is also due to the very fact that the research material or the research object is located at the intersection between different practices and on the margin of art history, obviously. Monographer of certain fragment of this work in the Science Factory, Anna Rafalska argued that this product cannot be situated neither as art nor as a folk art, and also it's not also utterly the utilitarian product. So this Włocławek science object remains kind of as a phenomenon bordering on art, industry, and craftsmanship. I think that maybe performative research understood after Barbara Bolt as emergent and experiential, involving a subjective and situated approach that draws on tacit and intuitive process. Everything so beautifully written is exploitation. Could enrich the qualitative and quantitative research on this spectrum by introducing precisely different topics and research questions regarding knowing, learning, and making processes. So main assumption of this project is that the results generated in the process of performative research will influence direction of art historical research by precisely generating agendas on this research. And to conclude, I would like to propose, obviously, just to provoke, 3 guiding principles of art historical research that incorporate artistic research that aims at this notion of, or this practice of transformative art history. So the first principle would be, and I quote my beloved Silvia Federici, art historical approach where which is constantly concerned with the question where to draw the line between what is accountable and what is speculative. The second principle would be the historization that constantly asks about what constitutes archive and what is the nature of historical transmission. And the third, the most important for me one, is the question of how to activate the past, not for it was, but for what is promised. And this is also a quotation from the collective The East. And this utopian moment in the past collective project is not pursued here with nostalgia, but precisely with the aim of reimagining different futures. And to conclude with quotation, because I've heard that one should never conclude with quotation. So I would like to quote this. What was expected? The creative potential was to be realized as never before. The conditions of all varieties of artistic expression were to be secured, democratized, and highlighted. Or do we deceive ourselves? Was there ever any substance in that promise? Were the assurances of a future cultural liberty a hoax? No, they weren't. And the anticipations were grounded in the theory, in the Marxist classics. The theory had a substance. This statement was made by the Polish philosopher Stefan Morawski in his article from 1975, in which he argued about the need to study the communist experience of social administration in order to understand and realize the possibility of a socialist society without the chasm between idea and socialist socialist reality. So in other words, he said communism never happened. But Moravsky continues in the same paragraph. It would be a serious error to equate the Marxist vision with infantile fantasy. Why? Because it is not an idle fantasy to expect that censorship can be eradicated in every official and informal guise, that creativity nourished whenever it might appear. It should be remembered that socialism hardly gotten underway. We still move ahead. 1975. Thank you.